I have to introduce both of them,
What we'll
okay?
do is this, Chief. Hey, Gerald. My name's Chief, so we have.
Okay.
What, just sit down.
Okay.
Let's get a chair after.
Welcome to the Digital Evangelist, expanding your ministry by writing for publication. My name is Jeanne DeFazio, and I'd like to open with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together for this seminar. We pray for your presence and your guidance. Please grant us open hearts and minds to receive wisdom, to understand new perspectives, and to engage in meaningful discussion. May your spirit inspire us, our speakers, and all our participants. We ask that you bless this event with success and that your will be done. Keep us safe, and may love be our guiding principle in all we say and do. We offer this prayer in your precious name. Amen. I'm so glad to be again at the Boston campus of Gordon Conwell Seminary's Urban Ministerial Education. And we have this evening to welcome us here, the Assistant Registrar of CUME, Karla Bezerra. I have.
Well, hello, everyone. I am so honored to be part of this. And just to say a hello from CUME, again, my name is Karla Bezerra. I am one of the assistant registrar for Gordon Conwell. And I just want to say a little bit about myself. I know Dr. Spencer for a long time. It's always a great pleasure to interact with them in anything that they do. Just a little bit about me. Alongside my husband, we pastor a Brazilian church in Somerville for more than 25 years. And my first contact with Gordon Conwell with CUME, which is our Boston campus, was a long time ago. I was a class of 2003 with a Master of Arts in Urban Ministry. It was a blessing to my life. Also, way back when we had the chance to take classes in English, in Portuguese, and I'm so glad to say that Gordon Conwell still carries that tradition of just embracing other cultures and other languages, and real pastors and ministers who are already doing ministry and want to get a theological education. So I joined the staff a couple of years ago. This is my third year serving in the registration office. And back in 2023, I came back to classes. That's why you see me as an auditor. But I just finished my MDiv equivalency to become a DMin. I am now a DMin, Doctor of Ministry student with my first residency starting in February. So just I want to leave a word of encouragement for you who are here with a purpose, with a calling, whatever the Lord has for you. I want to bless you. I want to encourage you. So be blessed in the name of Jesus.
Jeanne,
I
you're on
believe that
mute.
you're muted, Jeanne.
We are also very privileged this evening, thank you, to have Gerald Dowling, an Operations and Missions Manager here. So we welcome you all. And right now, I would like to introduce our team. First up is our guest lecturer, Reverend Dr. William David Spencer. Dr. Spencer is the Distinguished Adjunct Professor of Theology and the Arts at Gordon Conwell's Boston campus for Urban Ministerial Education. He has authored or edited 333 different publications, not including reprints, but including 18 books, 2 of which are universally considered definitive in their fields. He has won 20 writing and editing awards. Thank you, Dr. Spencer. Next, I want to welcome Reverend Dr. Wilma Faye Mathis, author of Jesus Among the Homeless, who is hosting this seminar on Zoom. Thanks so much for everything you've done, Wilma. As you can see, we are missing a few people, and we're having a few people with sound problems in by phone, but we have a wonderful cross-cultural and group of participants from all over the country. I'd like to start first with Richard Bruce. Thank you, Richard. Richard holds a PhD in economics from UCDavis and is a former economics instructor at St. John's University. When I mention you, say a few words about yourself, what you've published or what you would like to publish, and how publish it if you, okay, just a second. All right, here we go.
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff online. I have my website, richleebruce.com, my YouTube channel, Rich Lee Bruce, and I do a lot on Reddit. Once again, Rich Lee Bruce. If you see Rich Lee Bruce, that's me. One of the things I started out with was trying to encourage religious radio by particularly a lot of it on AM, by putting up advice on how to get better AM radio reception. It rapidly became the most popular site on that subject according to Google. #1 for about 10 years, and maybe in the top 10 for another 10 years or 10, 15 years. I also get into getting religious books into public libraries. If you Google Catholic books, public libraries, I'm first or second on that for last 30 years or so. It also involved quite a bit in religious comics. I sent a letter suggesting that the Daughters of St. Paul do the Lives of the Saints in comic book form. And that inspired them to do that. And they, for about a quarter of a century, the major purveyor of English language religious Catholic comics. So those are some of the many projects, many others that I get involved in. Can't hear you. Unmute.
Jeanne. Jeanne, you need to unmute yourself.
All right. Next up is Burke Fong, who attended UCDavis and graduated from UC Berkeley. His family history is included in Dr. Gabriel Chin's Chinese Exclusion Research Project. The Fong family's China Cafe persisted through the anti-Chinese laws and public sentiment of the early 20th century, 2 world wars, the Spanish flu, and COVID-19. Welcome and thank you for being here, Burke.
Thank you. Actually, the name of the restaurant was called the Chicago Cafe here in Woodland, California. Until recently, it was the oldest Chinese American restaurant run by the same family. Until it was in business until since 1903, and so they just recently closed because my cousin who runs it is my age and decided he wanted to retire. So thank you very much, Jeanne.
I did mention, and we have him back in the classroom, Gerald Dowling, yes, who is sharing a screen with Dr. Spencer right now. He is the operations and admissions director at CUME.
Good evening, everyone. May God bless you in this seminar. I'm here to
We just
Dr.
need Dr.
Spencer,
Dowling
you're
to
muted.
take his phone off mute.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Well, blessings to all of you online from all across the country or the world, wherever you're calling in from. The blessing to have Dr. Spencer and Jeanne here in the building to hold a seminar. I pray that everything goes well. I'm the operations manager and admissions manager. I make sure everything runs here. Have a blessed evening. Thank you for letting me step in, say hello. God bless.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Linda Lockhart. Linda, can you hear us? Can you unmute? Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us, Linda.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Oh, 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, I don't know how this works, but anyway, here I am.
Okay, we can see you. This is great.
Okay. Good evening and God bless everyone. Thank you for having me. I am attending this seminar to thank Dr. Spencer and his wife, Dr. Aida Spencer, for publishing my review of an artistic tribute to Harriet Tubman. And the Africanist Review, also to thank Reverend Dr. Wilma Faye Mathis for publishing Jeanne DeFazio's chapter in Jesus Among the Homeless. I contributed to that chapter describing my time in a homeless shelter for women. Thanks to you all, I have expanded my ministry by writing for publication. If I can do this, so can you. God bless you all. And I say thank you so much. And if you say this, it will encourage others to expand their ministry. And I say it like that because I'm saying it to you, but I would like you to say it to others as well, because it's so needed. Thank you all so much. God bless again. Shalom.
Linda, that was awesome. Thanks so much. Can you mute, darling? Okay. We're going to go on to David Groff. Thank you, David.
Hello, everybody. My background is as an Africanist historian. I taught African history and Western humanities at Reed College, and then served as an administrator at Linfield College until my retirement in 2009. My experience with publication is probably a good deal slimmer than most of yours, but I did publish several articles based on my doctoral research in Côte d'Ivoire on the development of cocoa and coffee production in the colonial period. And I did contribute an afterword to Otto and the White Dove that was organized by Jeanne. So I'm happy to be here with you and to listen to what you all have to say. And Burke, my mother grew up in Woodland, and I can imagine that she ate at the restaurant you mentioned.
You probably did. You know, we had like being open for basically almost 122 years. We've had several generations visit the restaurant over the years.
Yeah.
Difficulty. We have Louise and Greg on, and just for the sake of the situation we're in, I'm just going to briefly intro them because they're not able to unmute. Louise Maguire is here tonight. She holds a master's in social work. Her professional career includes work with the criminally insane and juvenile delinquents. We appreciate you being here tonight. And Greg Brunet is here. Greg Brunet was a UCDavis and UC Berkeley student, and he has contributed to 2 of my books. I'm extremely grateful to you, Greg, for being here. All right. I think we've hit everyone who's... Sofia. Thank you, Sofia. Let me mute. Go ahead, darling. Here.
Hello. I am a UCDavis student. I'm formerly incarcerated. I'm just trying to, get my BA. It'll be happening in 2026 in the spring. I'll have a minor in education. After that, I will be moving on to get a master's with a teaching credential. And after that, hopefully a PhD in education. My goal is to change education because there is a definitive school to prison pipeline in regular education, in regular curriculum. And I want to help fix that. I have a paper that was published with the Justice Evolved Collaborative, specifically for justice involved individuals. And I also submitted another paper for publication. Hopefully it's going to be published soon. It is about curriculum as a tool for justice, which goes over trying to eradicate that pipeline. And yeah, by the grace of God, I'm here and doing what I'm doing. And I've had a lot of support from my dad, Burke, and my husband and my family. And here I am. And if, I've built this new life for myself, but it's a story that shows that, anyone who's going through hardship, growth is possible, change is possible. Thank you.
We're so grateful. Now, we're going to move along to the direct instruction part of the seminar. Dr. Spencer will now explain the publishing process. Thank you.
You have to mute on your side.
Yeah.
Privilege. Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris. It really is a great privilege to talk to you. You're a very august, educated, and forward-moving group. So it's a great privilege for me to have this honor to talk with you. Okay. It's a long talk. I have revised it and revised it, to try to get it exactly what you need and to move you forward. And we're going to cover as much ground as we can tonight. So if you're wondering if this guy is ever going to stop, no matter how hard I tried to get everything in I need to tell you, it's going to take an hour. Okay, normally I teach 3 hours. So really you're getting an easy break here tonight. Okay, we called this expanding your ministry by writing for publication. And let's start with prayer. Gracious Lord, again, this is such a privilege for me to be able to share some of the things we've learned over these decades of publishing. And Lord, I can see that this is an extremely intelligent crowd. It's also a group of wonderful saints, each one bringing something different and useful to the table. So Lord, you're reconciling the world to yourself, and it's just a blessing to be able to share in community like this. In the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. And as I've taught here for Gordon Conwell for 42 years. My wife for 43, because she was actually the one called. And after a year, they hired me too, which was nice. But we love the school. And you can see with people like Gerald and Karla, so can do. This is our international campus. There are entire years I have no Anglos in my class. It's all people from around the world, but lately it's just been a tremendous variety. And of all the places that I've been involved in, I've never seen community like this. So it's a blessing. Anyway, let's get on. Now, what I'll be doing tonight is I'll be sharing my advice at first, how to prepare to write for publication. I'll also give you 9 writing hints to equip your work for getting hearing. I'll provide a questionnaire for you to start to edit your short pieces. And you can use this to make sure that what you send in to acquisitions editors is what they are going to respond to. And I'll share some suggestions on how to start if your goal is publishing. So this information that I'm giving you should enrich your manuscripts, help you get them together to be viewed by an acquisitions editor. And that's the goal that we're aiming at. Now, for preparing to write for publication, to begin, count the cost. On the rare occasions anybody asks me what the life of a writer is like, I always advise them, only write if you cannot not write. If you're a doer who is out and about making things happen, changing the world, performing courageous actions down to the last shovelful of strenuous work, you're probably not going to be the person to write about it. The woman or man who interviews you and takes that recording home to spend hours transcribing it in detail to capture just what readers need to know about your inspiring life is going to be a very different kind of person. Your biographer, the writer, has been gifted by the Holy Spirit to fulfill a calling that demands a lot of attention to detail. Therefore, the first step in any would-be writer's life is prayer. Get on your knees humbly before God and ask if this is really what God has gifted you to do. And keep praying every day while you're writing anything and whenever you have a problem in the process of writing. Next, let's anchor on a definition of what it means to publish so that we're not just drifting about in a sea of confusion, but we understand clearly what our task is. In other words, to put this in writing terms, we need to make sure we're on the same page. Now, according to Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, the term publication means the act of publishing a book, periodical, map, piece of music, engraving, or the like, the act of bringing it before the public. Now, do you see how flexible the term publication is? It encompasses numerous works authors present publicly. Today, we would add emails, e-articles, e-books. In the ancient days, however, authors would read their manuscripts publicly, and customers would hire scribes, or students would sit at their professors' feet to write down their words as textbooks for their libraries or their studies. And some of the works that we have from Plato and others, these are student gatherings of the thoughts that they gave. We, however, are not living in those or even more recent days when people relaxed together around the fire and read the latest installment of Charles Dickens' Curtain Saga. Books, particularly, have taken it on the chin from radio, then television, then movies. Today, with the internet, we're bombarded with sounds and visuals through games and news reports, broadcasting events, even as they're happening, music videos, scads of information steeped in a metaverse of opinions, some by other humans and some by artificial intelligence, insulting us with data. Well, all of this is engulfed in a tsunami of advertisements inundating everyone who ventures out in the stormy sea of websites. Ebooks have tried to ease the impact, but sales are down for magazines and newspapers and all types of books. Acquisitions editors and publishers are responsible to sort through submissions of prospective articles, stories, and poems to print and to secure the most promising projects, the ones that'll sell. Choosing what best suits their readers and preparing these with a prospective author to submit for consideration to an editorial team is the task that they do. So how does any would-be author shoulder her or his way into this industry? Well, after many painful moments, my wife and I put together 9 writing hints to equip your work to gain a hearing. Number 1, if you see writing as a ministry, then it's both about expressing your views in a way people will want to read, and at the same time, need to read as you're guided by the Holy Spirit. Your goal is to please God and edify your audience. Therefore, make your work accessible. Today, shorter sentences are more accessible. In Bible times, people's attention spans seem to have been longer. Since the Apostle Paul could write long sentences with many parts, according to Google, however, today's average attention span is quite short, often cited as being around 47 seconds. Are you all still with me? I hope so. Anyway, this is the significant drop from 2024's 2.5 minutes. They blame Instagram and TikTok. But I would also add as guilty the disruptions of advertisements suddenly break in from all sides when one is trying to read a weather report or anything else, and whisks your attention away to floods in Jakarta, mudslides in Central America, electrical storms in Oklahoma. Concentrating is becoming a lost art. Ann Johnson estimates the attention span is now down to 12 seconds, maybe 8. I hope she's not right, but I fear she is. By the way, what were we talking about? People often ask me why I use no cell phone. As a writer and a professor, I need time for sustained thought. I can't even keep up with email. I hate to tell you this, but I'm 22,000 behind. That's the truth. If I'm being texted constantly, flooded with more advertisements, getting updates, and on, all thought will evaporate. Recently, we invited some college students over for a meal after church to get to know them. As soon as they arrived, they all pulled out their cell phones and started in. We asked a few questions about them. In a brief pause, they offered a brief answer, pleasantly enough, but dove back into their phones. So we sat with them in silence. Our son, who works at a public access cable station, told us he had the same experience teaching a class for a nearby college. He advised us, and I quote, "It's a good thing you didn't complain. They might have immediately texted it to all their friends on Instagram." The lesson from all of this? Write short sentences. I'm not particularly writing long hypotactic sentences in this talk and chapter, but I'm not writing short paratactic sentences either. Why not? Because if I've lost you, then you're probably not going to be called to be a writer, because you haven't created enough time for sustained thought to write. So we're working against the flow here. Having said that, I still believe it is worthwhile to write short and brief but poignant sentences that will move readers along. Don't bog them down in a lot of verbosity. Number 3, very important, use strong verbs. Now, many of you have probably heard this already, but honestly, it just is the kind of news we take to the heart. Don't overuse is. For example, if you're creating fiction, don't write Emily is in the doorway, or even Emily came into the doorway. Use your verbs to give your reader a feeling for what kind of person your character Emily is. Does she stalk into a room? Flounce in, creep in, burst in, sidle in, simply stick her head in and sweep the room with a commanding or a diffident or a sly or a charitable glance. Now, here's an example of a very simple transitional pair of sentences I used to move readers swiftly from one encounter to another in Cave of Little Faces, the novel my wife and I wrote together. And there's a picture of it. I didn't want to belabor the transition and lose readers or distract them. And I got this, I just opened the novel up, look for the first transition, and because I do this in all my transitions. And so I just wanted to show you how I do it. At the same time, I wanted to give my readers a feeling for a new character, Tomas, as a volatile, pushy individual who is making demands on another character, Ricky, to take hasty action to solve a dilemma, just as Thomas himself was already doing. Now, when we were leading into the scene, we had just seen an intense encounter between Ricky and Josephina. Josephina is our protagonist, and Ricky's potential boss, whom he currently dislikes immensely. When Ricky hears a solid knock on the door, he assumes Joe is back for a last word. Hard knocking on the doors is not reserved for men. As we all know from experience, capable women can be no nonsense when they decide to get a job done. Ricky, whose consciousness is just beginning to be raised to this fact, is annoyed. So how do I have Ricky open the door to describe his current mood? And how instead does Tomas enter? Does he explode in? Maybe, but that might be overkill since he's been up all night. But tired or not, he's still pushy. So this is what I wrote. Before Ricky could do anything, he was called back by another knock on his door. He frowned and tossed it open, assuming she was back again for something or other. Instead, his childhood friend Tomas, short, square, solid, pushed past him into the house. "What do you got to eat?" demanded Tomas. "I'm starving." Now, in this opening paragraph, this is chapter 21, page 148, so I said I lucky did this. I use the term tossed for the way Ricky opens his door, pushed past him for his friend's entry, and demanded for his friend's opening words. In this way, I have the verbs color the new scene for my readers. And this is just one simple illustration of how verbs bring your work alive and keep your readers' interest. Number 4, use colorful, fresh illustrations and analogies. In today's introduction, I intentionally used a cliche. I said, make sure we're all on the same page. That's a little writing joke. It makes people feel comfortable if you use them once in a while, and makes them feel at home because it's something they're familiar with. I could have written a fresher phrase like, let's all set sail together, since I was using seafaring imagery as an analogy to keep my metaphor consistent in the opening. Normally, it's best to avoid cliches, unless you're intending to make your present character or passage prosaic. Sometimes they do provide an island of rest for readers. So I've used one in this presentation, but I realize, of course, this is always a dangerous thing to do. We don't want our readers to think our book is going to be a monotony of cliches. Excuse me. So if we put one in, we only do it for a very good reason. I once added one into a poem to underscore the prosaic monotony of illness, but to this day, I'm not sure that was a good idea. With fresh illustrations or turns of phrase, you usually can't go wrong. Although I once read a book crammed with so many fresh turns of phrase, it got really tiresome. As the action submerged into the writer's styling, this reader got drowned. Number 5, how much should you quote another person's writing? Jeanette Gardner Littleton cautions as little as possible. If a book is short, be very brief. If it's long, the usual limit is quoting 300 to 500 words. Now, what you're striving for is called fair usage. Copyrighted material is a sensitive area in which to trespass. Best to write for permission than to have to face the legal shotgun for poaching in someone else's terrain. Even a hint of an accusation of plagiarism, and the word races around the industry and you're blacklisted from publishing. No reputable publisher wants a lawsuit. Now, if you're still determined to write a book, here's how we found a handy way to build one. My father was a painting contractor and mineralogist who loved books and filled every room with them. His knowledge was prodigious. Although he was not Jewish in background, apparently he shared the belief with his Jewish friends that all boys should be taught a trade. His was professional house painting, since he detested having a boss and could only work happily if he himself was in charge. One summer day, while we're on the job, he asked me, "How would you price this house?" I was stymied. He said, "Well, how long would it take us to paint the side?" 2 days, I offered. "Right," he replied. And then he added, "Multiply that by 4 sides. And I work about twice as fast as you do, so I earn twice as much." That made sense to me. I was slow and meticulous, so he put me on the high work. I was the kid 3 stories up painting the lattice work under the roof. Next, he asked, "How much does the paint cost?" And then he put it all together. We had our price. Well, when we had worked our way up to writing books, I and my wife adapted my dad's advice to our task. We asked our publishers how long they wanted a book to be. We divided it up into chapters, usually about 15 to 20 pages each, double-spaced in size 12 font. Then we figured in approximately 10 pages for the introduction, which is often written last when the book is basically finished, since we now know what's going to be in it. And we figured 10 pages for the conclusion. The goal is to keep it all in the page limits, because if we don't do it, they'll do it. And seeing those slash outs of the pages is excruciating for any writer. So you see how easily that would build, and it makes sense and gives your book balance. Now, writers often work alone, but being published is a joint effort that requires writers to adopt an attitude of teamwork. We have to be a reliable investment ourselves to produce a reliable product. One reason why I have 22,000 backed up emails is because at one point I edited 2 journals at the same time, and I got on everybody's hit list. It's like what you see if you have a Chuck E. Cheese near you and you have a child as we do, used to hit down those, what were they, prairie dogs or something like that, and more would come up. Well, that's the way it is with promoters. Once they get you on the hit list, I get about 50 to 100 emails every day. It's impossible for me to work through them, no matter how many I put in block. But in the 10 years, I edited Priscilla papers for Christians for Biblical Equality International. In the 17 years, my wife and I have been editing the Africanist Journal. What is astonishing to us is how many Christians, professors, and students volunteer to review a book, receive the book, and never produce a book review, though they keep the book and don't send it back, despite the guidelines we provide for how to do the review and the reminders our staff sends out to them. An even more curious dead end is when we send back grammatical corrections and questions for improving a submission for an article, and nothing is ever returned. One gentleman died, so he had an excuse. But everyone else looks hale and hearty, but just doesn't get around to the revision. I wonder, do they pray for God's empowerment and guidance to bring their work into completion? The prayer for wisdom is one we notice God always answers. When it comes to reneging on delivering a book, as several people we know have done, the consequences are serious. Publishers demand advances be paid back. Authors whom publishers find difficult are labeled problem authors, and the opportunity to do another book disappears. What authors have to realize is that publishers are responsible to their employers. Their editors, copy editors, acquisitions editors, their art department, those who work with the printers to keep on deadline, those who market, promote, create their publicity, their catalogs, their advertisements, and on. They and their families have to eat, and pay their bills, and heat their homes. Our books need to feed them all. This is why we all have to write books that people will want to read. This is why you learn to do that in your church newsletter, your blog, your internet postings. You need to find out how to do a book that will enhance someone else's life and will please God by edifying your reader. We all need to write something that not only tells our readers what they need to do, but attracts them by your style so they will want to know, which is why I gave you some hints for what people are looking for today in the writing styles. The best books focus their winsome style and fascinating data on a main point, one main point. In our book, Christian Egalitarian Leadership, for example, our main guiding focus was to empower 100% of the church to use the gifts the Holy Spirit has given each believer to assist God in bringing in God's reign. Staying on that focus, on that point, leads to the next piece of advice. Don't be afraid to eliminate words, sentences, even paragraphs that might distract or even derail your readers from the flow of your argument. If you're writing nonfiction, or your narrative if you're writing fiction, once a reader sets down your book in distraction, they're gone. Better you keep them up all night, turning pages until they are bleary-eyed in the morning, because once they rest up and stop hating you for wrecking their night's sleep, they'll be back for your next book. Make sure you have a main point or a thesis, an interesting start, a body, and at the end, summarize what you've written. Also include at least one application in a short piece. My wife, a prolific and successful writer in her own right, and she's now working on her 21st book. She and I created for you a questionnaire to guide you in checking your writing. It deals with style of writing, content, and mechanics of writing. Now, you're going to see a chart that follows. If you study this chart carefully before you write, then use it as your guide while you're writing. And finally, check your written work with its questions. You will find it will improve your work and make what you produce more thorough. And we look down this chart that we have for you. Style of writing, and there's everything that I'm telling you about that. Content and mechanics of writing. So everything you need actually to put something together will be covered by one of those entries. So how do you break into the industry? If your goal is publishing, and I'm going to suggest how to start. First, begin by setting your goals. Where do you want to focus? As you saw in Webster's definition, publishing covers a wide area of products. Books, of course, get the most press, but they're just one part of writing. Some writers, of course, don't seek to be published at all. Emily Dickinson, who wrote close to 1,800 poems, had only 11 printed in her lifetime, these possibly without her consent. The main thing writers do is write all the time because so many of us just enjoy creating with words. When you can please God and edify others, it's a ministry. Some of it gets published, a lot of it doesn't. But it's still all about recording thoughts on paper or on e-copy and doing that creatively. So books are just a sustained hyperspacing of a daily activity. Don't let the thought of writing scare you or threaten you or block you from writing. Writer's block. Okay, writer's block happens sometimes when you first start to write. After you've been writing a long time, I haven't had anything that's intervened in decades. And I think what it is if you have writer's block, you're probably not moving along on something that you thought through that well beforehand. And I've noticed that was my case. And sometimes I just put it down and start writing something else and wait for the inspiration to come back. Writing itself is actually natural. When you jot down a note for your kids or for your friends, this is an everyday part of life. And I think writing is actually an everyday part of life. It's simply saying things from your head with your hands or having another means to get these thoughts into legible words besides saying them with your mouth. When writing for an audience to read, Start sensibly by gaining experience, building a publishing track record. And I can't emphasize this enough, especially as you move into the industry. Unpublished writers should certainly start with seeking opportunities to get published, but don't try to start with a book. That's like jumping cold into a cage with one of those mixed arts, martial arts champions. You'll either run out of energy in 5 pages, or if you do manage to finish something sizable, editors will pound on your ego by rejecting your work with a form letter. Instead, start with small pieces and build a track record that trains you. Publishers respect a pile of published work that you've amassed with your own efforts. That's your best assurance to them that if they give you a chance, you will come through. So start small. Begin building your publishing resume by seeking to publish in venues available to you. Opportunities are all around you. What am I talking about? Church or business or other organizational newsletters. If you still have any local newspapers, study what they're printing, what they care about, and dive in by sending interesting letters to the editor. If your letter is published, find an appropriate topic to offer to do a one-off guest column. My first published pieces were done for a 9th grade journalism class and were sent to the local newspaper. I reported school events. I also submitted a poem or a story to my public high school's own student newspaper and had a little yearly literary journal, and I put stuff in that. And I just love to write on it. I love to send it in, and it was nice seeing those little tiny articles about the Projectionist Club had a president, and all this stuff. I don't know who read it, if anybody, but it's actually the way I got my start. Now, today, a blog can be a door in. In fact, I think a blog post, in my experience, is one of the best avenues available for building a readership. We had no idea our monthly blog would ever go over 126,000 hits and still be growing rapidly. My wife and I were astonished. While I was just beginning to draft this chapter on writing, we discovered our blog had a tracking device. It told us that every week our blog's main activity was garnering 1,000 hits from Brazil. So why Brazil? I've always loved Brazilian music, and since I was a teenager, I've been collecting Brazilian records and compact discs. We love Guaraná, that fabulous Brazilian soda made from the fruit of the same name. Here in our Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary's Boston campus for ministerial education, my wife was the senior professor of New Testament, and I am a biblical systematic theologian, have been privileged to teach so many delightful and brilliant Brazilian students. By the way, you heard from Karla earlier. She was one of our Brazilian students. Some of them, of course, have tried to slip their term papers by us in Portuguese, figuring since my wife is Spanish and she can speak Spanish, and I can speak some, at least to know what my relatives were talking about me. We can navigate grading Portuguese too, but we're all disappointed. These languages are actually way too different. We haven't yet enjoyed a visit to beautiful Brazil itself, so we're shocked that so many Brazilians like our blog this much. Who knew? That same week were hits on our blog from the Netherlands. Now, my wife has Dutch heritage. Her mother was from Puerto Rico, her dad was from Holland. I've lectured at a robotics conference at the University of Leiden, and we've explored that amazing country. And so we do have a certain connection with the Dutch. The next week, the Dutch were our #1 readers, but our third massive readers were from Vietnam, where we don't know of any previous connection at all. The fourth was from Russia. Wow. This is really humbling that people all over the world find our posts useful. The next week, USA readers were our #1. In other words, the nationalities vary in number every month. The same fact is true for Africanus Journal, which my wife and I founded, and named for the great early church scholar Julius Africanus. I consider him the first modern. He lived around the year 200. For 17 years, it has been produced in partnership with Gordon Conwell's Boston campus. I call this the can-do campus. And we, in addition to the great community, it's really easy to flourish here, and everybody loves it. We're also cheaper than a lot of other places you go. But anyway, we know from emails to us and submissions of articles from African, Korean, Chinese, British, Filipino, and many other readers that the journal issues are being read all over the world. And I asked myself, why is that? Along with guidance by the Holy Spirit, the secret, I think, why our blog posts and journal articles are read so widely is that we and our contributors, which include our Gordon Conwell faculty and students, but many others. Some teachers and some just Christians who have something worthwhile to say. We try to write interesting pieces about what each writer cares about. In other words, we don't tell our potential readers what we have for breakfast. Who cares? Why would anybody read that? I wouldn't. Writing and publishing about something interesting that matters to us appeals to readers who care about that issue too. Blogs cost little to do, and if their posts are edifying and have a worthwhile topic and they please God, those aspects are what are important to the readers we attract. Blog posts and journal entries can do a lot of good for God's kingdom in the world. Now, how do we do it in our blog, which we call Applying Biblical Truths Today? What we do is we relate each blog posting to a Bible verse and blend in the relevance with some interesting report or fact or incident or issue or story that captured our attention, and each seems to do the same with our readers. I don't know, is Saideh on tonight?
Hello, Dr. Spencer. Hello, everyone.
Oh, you're there, Saideh. I was just going to brag
I am
about
so
it.
sorry. My computer wouldn't turn on and it would not give me the passcode for 30 minutes. So sorry.
Well, you're here at the right time, because I was just going to point out that your blog, that you did a guest blog for us, has had, what, over 8,000 hits. It was an astonishingly wonderful blog, and you only did it, what, about a month or two ago? And has really responded to readers. So I just had to put that in because we're so proud of you. You know, it says in the Bible, we can boast on behalf of another. So that's what I'd like to do for you. Now, other ways to break into writing can begin as simply as crafting our emails or even writing our own greeting cards, which I do, by the way. I go over to CVS and I can't find what I like. I just make up one for my wife or my son. Now, double check everything that you write. Don't email a reply so full of errors and omissions that they're just gobbledygook to your recipients. They may ignore your future emails. Instead, if you take some care with what you send out, not only do you build your experience by practice, but you actually can attract potential readers who may want to hear more from you, and so you can develop your potential readership as your work grows. Start with who knows you. If your church has a newsletter, offer to write a short piece or an announcement for an upcoming event. If your church doesn't have a newsletter, offer to start one. Since these are often done online, they will cost you nothing, but you can gain an immediate readership. You can advertise your blog on it by simply putting it in your signature byline. And this is the way you gather your readership. Stay focused on your task. Remember, it's all about building ideas with words. Once you've acquired some experience and a reputation with your initial connections, then you can expand to reviews like book or movie reviews, or articles, or stories, or poems, whichever is your talent. Books are often a series of linked articles. Stories are expanded to short stories, to novelettes, to novels. Let me give you some classic examples from the past. The great Cape Cod storyteller, Joseph C. Lincoln, began by publishing short stories in popular magazines. Then he adapted some of the plots in these short stories into novels, and they became successful. G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown mystery books are simply compilations of short stories he wrote for magazines. Edgar Rice Burroughs' iconic Tarzan books were magazine serials gathered into books. He was working in a company as a shipping clerk, and he just wrote it on the backs of old tags and other places like that. Few writers start big. It's like musicians say, I was an overnight success after 10 years of performing in coffee shacks. Every opportunity to write is important. I say yes to almost all requests to contribute something if I know anything about the topic and I can fit in the deadline time. That's how I got 33, actually, I think it's up to 34 now publications. I just say yes, and then I try to do something good. The reason why is because all requests, no matter how small, are in venues that are important to somebody, so they're important in themselves. No publication is too small if you can contribute something that will please God by edifying an audience and thereby assisting God in reconciling the world. And that, of course, I keep quoting that, this 2 Corinthians 5:18-20. Then your effort is worthwhile, no matter how small the publication might be. And I don't know how many little articles I've done on different topics just for my students who have these little church newsletters and things like that. Don't dwell on yourself as your main topic. This is a warning to take seriously. Now, I put this in. This may seem strange to you because the main piece you're going to write in your is your autobiographical sketch. Now, you may have also heard the saying, there is a book in every person. Our own story is indeed the one we know best. We live with it every day. We find it interesting and want to tell it to everybody. So it's what nearly every new author tries to do at first. But unless you're compiling your memoirs for your grandchildren and you just saved a famous movie star or some country's president from drowning, or you can explain without lying how you earned $1 trillion last week while you were on vacation or something of such great magnitude, you probably won't get published, especially if you haven't yet built your publishing resume. Most of our life stories are as boring as watching snails race to everyone else. For example, try giving a detailed report to your friends of everything you did last month and count the yawns as you do so. Editors want to see that you can and will deliver something that is interesting to them and their readers, and not just have their expectancies slaughtered with a piece that begins, I was born at an early age. Goes from there. So how do we reconcile writing what you know best, your own story, with what editors will accept? Here's what I think. Make your story about something that happened to you or you know about more thoroughly than others do. That will pull readers in. And I want to show you some successful examples. Eugene Neville was a pastor in Boston, so busy in ministry that he neglected having glaucoma treated. After he became blind, he wrote a book called The Corridors of Strange Darkness, struggling with the experience of glaucoma. It's a heart-rending report of his own experience as a busy pastor, with a warning to take care of the gift of sight that God has given us. John Henry Womack, another pastor, told his tale in Sharecropper to Entrepreneur to Pastor, tracing how he rose from poverty as a child of field hands to become a business tycoon and finally a Boston pastor. Our moderator, the Reverend Jeanne DeFazio, weaves in her own story as an actress in her 2 major books, the acclaimed Berkeley Street Theater, how improvisation and street theater emerged as a Christian outreach to the culture of the time, and her bestseller, The Christian World Liberation Front, the Jesus Movement Model of Revival and Social Reform for the Postmodern Church. And this is not in my notes, but I should say tonight's entire program was Jeanne's insight, and she thought it would be worthwhile for her friends, and that's why we're doing it. And our text expert, the wonderful Wilma, as I call her, the Reverend Dr. Wilma Mathis, built her doctoral thesis and her ensuing book, Jesus Among the Homeless, Successful Strategies of Christian Ministers to the Marginalized, out of her own experience in ministering to women in homeless shelters. You can see how fascinating every one of these books is. And they're all built from what they knew best, their own experience and their own life. And they focused on one major point. In my case, I didn't mention myself in my first several books. But when a publisher asked Aida, that's my wife, and me to do a book on suffering, we weren't sure at first if we could actually tackle it. We prayed about it and felt led that we could do it if we built it off the 4 biblical reasons she had discovered as she read through the Bible and was explaining in her class, Suffering and Joy in the New Testament. And the way we read the Bible is every time we finish it, we start it again. I don't know how many times we've been through the Bible, but my wife likes to look for something different each time. Now, I just got done going through all of the Gospels, just looking at how Jesus is addressed and what is named for the next book that I'm doing. This will be for Kriegel. I used these 4 reasons to interpret the 2 devastating events that had derailed my birth family, the sudden accidental death of my sister and the work accident 2 years later that crippled my father. In this way, as I wrote up her biblical insights and applied them to my own experience, we were able to come up with our book, Joy Through the Night, Biblical Resources on Suffering. I was also able to address some of the issues that I carried in from childhood, because I was 6 when the first event took place and 8 when the second one did. But it really has been something that's been on my mind all through my life. And certainly devastated my family, which is very small. I was the only surviving child after a bunch of stillbirths too. Now, this is the 31st year this book has been in print, and still we're told it's helping people cope with life's reversals. What we learned from that is we need to look for a middle ground between what we want to write and what people want to read. We're all tempted to self-indulge, writing what we want to write, like maybe that experimental novel that's so esoteric and complex that we think they'll just have to give us a prize, or that book on our favorite hobby that has been neglected by everyone else and will open their eyes to just how much fun collecting old gas tank covers can really be. Or our explanation of why all parents, and especially mine, should have let us drive as soon as we could see over the dashboard and began grabbing at the steering wheel. Now, wait a minute. No one is going to write that one, but you get the point. We can do a modicum of self-indulging, but we have to remember that writing for us is a ministry and should be pleasing God by advancing God's reign on earth, reaching people with what will help them advance in their faith, and thereby pleasing acquisitions editors with a project that they can see will turn into a worthwhile and useful piece of work. This way we won't waste our time and end up with a yellowing pile of dust-gathering paper under an old flash drive for e-copies in the back, maybe the way back of a drawer somewhere. Here's another warning. Be very careful about publishing with what is called a vanity press. Now, this is a publishing house that charges you for everything. They might as well hold you up with a mask and a gun. They may soak you dry of thousands of dollars and you'll end up with nothing but a box of books in your basement. I heard a horrible account recently of a vanity press that charged a woman $1,000 and only gave her 20 books. They charged her $50 a piece. How could she ever sell those and recoup her costs? So I say, look, if you are in a hurry and don't want to wait, there's so many print-on-demand publishers available, you don't need to be ripped off. Some print-on-demand publishers do pay for the book and are supposed to split the profit with you, but you have to work your way up to getting them interested. And be very careful to make sure the publisher keeps its end of the bargain. An agent with whom I was working several years ago told me about a publisher with whom several of his other clients were working. Contracts were impressive. He was offering the publisher a 65% royalty for established authors. Who offers that? Most of the time, new writers are offered 5% to 7.5%, and even regularly published authors receive 10% royalty and are glad to get it. So this deal seemed too good to be true, a unique opportunity to cash in on one's own hard work, or so it appeared. But it wasn't long before a lawsuit woke everyone to the fact that no royalties were ever paid unless this publishing house initiated itself with a Ponzi scheme at the outset. When one client sued, he realized he had never received a signed copy of the publisher's contract. All of us signed our individual contracts and we sent them in, but none of us ever received a signed contract back from the publisher. Despite what we were expecting, the reality was that this publisher would supply books for a discount and advertised our title zealously, but sent us no royalties, keeping all the money from sales himself. Anything we earned, we had to garner from our own sales. He might supply a certain amount of publicity, but no signed contract, so no payoff. The publisher had a thriving business. His authors were the most famous people in the poorhouse. So make certain you get a contract that's signed before you deliver your whole manuscript. Of course, print-on-demand publishers do exist who don't offer royalties, and that's okay if you already have a readership and only expect to earn your keep from your own sales. But this arrangement should be made very clear to you at the outset. If you can sell your book successfully yourself, you can save the money you might have spent having them printed. And don't forget university presses. Now, this is one of the keys tonight. One of the most overlooked places that you really should be going to get your books published. University presses are getting into the competitive side on all types of writing. All right. When the publisher of Mysterium and Mystery, which is my first book, which was adapted from my own doctoral dissertation at Boston University, when it terminated its academic line, just suddenly decided it didn't want to do academic books anymore and just stopped the line. That's actually a common thing with academic books. My wife had the same experience with one of her books. It just simply stopped one day doing academic books and went for popular books. Anyway, In this case, though, this was UMI, and they're the one who do the doctoral dissertations on microfilm, and that they just started to stay with that. Well, the editors wanted to keep my book because it was selling. It was actually selling really well at the time. The company refused, and I received 2 offers. One from a big publisher who would put me in the big time, and the other one from a university press, Southern Illinois University Press. Now, Southern Illinois offered me $1,000 to go with them. I asked the big company editor what she would do if she were I, and she said, take the money, because they'll keep your book in print to earn the advance back. Oh. University presses are right in the center of the action these days. They have the money and they have the prestige, and they're wonderful to work with. Build your own clientele. Excuse me. In this day of social networking and excessive competition, you really do have to build your own readership. For shy writers, this is often very difficult. Some well-known publishers are now demanding a list of at least 2,000 people willing to buy your book before they'll take it. So I repeat, today, writers have to build their own clientele. You are the best sales representative for your own work. It used to be easy because you get a chance to speak at churches or senior centers or libraries if you had something interesting to say. But COVID killed that for a long time. It was just actually in the last 2 months, after a long dry period, we ourselves just had our first and second invitation to speak. And we actually brought some books along and we sold a few books after our presentations. So opportunities may be slowly beginning once again. Of course, there's always YouTube shows. Jeanne is proficient at these, so I won't have to say anything about them. I think your ebooks would sell best to net-oriented readers, and especially to readers in other countries if you mention them on your posts. So I think that's the way we do with our students. We have a lot of students that are out in the world, in Singapore and in Hong Kong, and we've had them. I had one in the Bahamas, and it's easier for them to be able to get the ebooks. So you have to encourage your publishers to make sure that they do have ebooks, because not all publishers have them. Write about what you know. I know about inner city ministry and theology, and I know about New Jersey, where I was born, and Kentucky, and Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, because those are the places that I've lived. I also know about Jamaica because my wife and I taught there on and off for 10 years. So I've met the Rastafari, and I take their opinions and their music very seriously. Out of my many interviews with them came my book on their variety of views of the Lord, Dread Jesus. I used 48 of the interviews I did in that book. This was published by SPCK, England's oldest religious publishing house. And there's a picture of that. That's after 12 years, Whiffenstock, the largest producer of Christian books in the world, bought the rights, and today it is in print with Whiffenstock here in the United States. So after 12 years in England, and it went here to the United States, it's been in print here since then. Now, before I finished Dread Jesus, with 2 Caribbean scholars, I also did a side project, which I named Chanting Down Babylon, the Rastafari Reader. And this multi-author work became a best-selling book, is universally considered the definitive work on Rastafari, thanks to a book review declaring it so in Kingston's Sunday Gleaner, that's Jamaica's premier newspaper. It's also the only book of mine I've ever seen being sold in an airport, which was certainly a thrill. Also, for professionals in any field that demands you write to move forward, you do well to center your efforts on projects related to your job to keep a paycheck coming in. Let me stress that. Don't quit your job to write, because you may wind up starving. Yeah. My field is theology and the arts. So while I'm doing these kinds of projects, I'm also writing in my field on topics mostly about theology illustrated in the arts. So my latest book, 3-in-1, is an analysis of the illustrations we use when we try to describe the Trinity, so we can discern what's good in our imagery and we can skip what's bad. Now, what I'm trying to show you is a connection here. As exotic as Dread Jesus and Chanting Down Babylon may appear, those in 3-in-1 are intrinsically related. How so? They are each about theology and the arts, in one case, music. That's the way, the main way that the teaching of Rastafari was disseminated. And in the other way, imagery, because that's what I know, and my title is Distinguished Adjunct Professor of Theology and the Arts, which is still an adjunct position. So this is what I enjoy, but it's also what I'm expected to write about. So my advice to you is, before you write your bio sketch, ask yourself this question: what do I know best? How is my life involved in this interest? And what do I want to share from it? And what do I not know about that I should leave to others? Here's what I don't know about: outer space, the Old West, Amish romances, deep sea diving, and a lot of other stuff. I leave those alone for other writers who actually know something about it. Therefore, along with target topics to write about, pick out a target audience of people who share your interest as potential readers for your books. As a result, I write my nonfiction books to use in class for my seminary students. That's my target audience. They're my primary audience. I've taught over 3,600 of them. I also have in mind informed lay readers, so I try to define all the technical terms I use. I tend to write my technical articles in systematic theology for my academic colleagues. I write my fiction for my friends. I keep in mind stories I would enjoy reading myself and ones I think friends and acquaintances would enjoy too. One very helpful reminder of having a target audience is Luke writing his gospel to Theophilus. As my former agent, Les Stovey, explained in his insightful article, Earning the Right to be Published, which you can read free online in the November 2018 issue of Africanist Journal. Make reading, revising, and rewriting an essential part of your writing discipline. I reread my manuscripts over and over again. Then I revise and revise and revise. In fiction, I try to get all the days my characters are living in my story coordinated just as days flow in our daily lives. So outlines are essential for creating both fiction and nonfiction. My wife and I use annotated outlines. Now, once you do that, and you've done everything, and you put everything that I've said in practice, let it go. What G.K. Chesterton said of a dog and a law is true in a book or any writing project as well. This is what he said: you have to instill into it what it needs before you let it go, because once it's off the leash, you can't call it back. So manage your time well. Figure out how much time you have to finish well, but at the same time, unless you're writing Gone with the Wind, don't spend a lifetime on it. I have a friend who was writing a book when I first met him some 30 years ago, and he's still working on it. There's no end in sight. Get it done. But at the same time, don't be in such a hurry that this is now onerous to you. Readers can tell when you're bored, and when they get bored, they're gone. Instead, take a break. You should have fun writing, relax. Think of your manuscript as a garden of words you want to see flourish. Think of delightful ways of putting your thoughts into words. Keep shaping sentences up until you can say, "Oh, I like that." To do this, you need time for sustained thought. Don't be in a rush just to bang stuff out to get something in hand or in print. Even a grocery list takes time. I've heard some writers say, "I hate writing, but I like having written." If you hate writing so much, why do it? Find another job you'll actually enjoy. Work ahead of deadlines. Don't leave them to the last minute. This is your life. Don't live it in self-inflicted misery. Always remember, when writing your manuscript, that within your target audience, your acquisitions editors are among your most important readers. Now, tonight, I shared advice on preparing to write. I gave you writing hints for getting a hearing, provided a questionnaire for editing your work, and gave suggestions on how to start if your goal is publishing. Sadly, we are out of time. Your next stage will be how to submit your finished work to an acquisitions editor. To cover that topic, I'm going to expand this presentation, listing the questions acquisitions editors ask. I will also describe what to put in the précis letter, which should accompany your sample chapter and should include a summary of your submission's main points. I'll add this information to our forthcoming companion book, The Digital Evangelist, Expanding Your Ministry by Writing for Publication, which we've been putting together primarily for this class. Now, here's the main point of tonight's presentation. If we feel led to please God by edifying people through our writing, we can write as a means to expand our ministry. But since there's no shortcut to excellence, all of us need to write with care so that we can best, or I should say we can present our best work, or we can best present our work, that would work too, to the Lord, and in that way, do our part to advance God's reign in this world. For all of you who stayed, I thank you, and I hope this was all helpful. Lord bless you.
Really appreciate all of you. Now, as soon as I figure out how to do this, We're now going to go into breakout rooms. Oh, Fred. Oh my gosh, Fred and Saideh are here. God bless you both. Listen, this is great. Wilma, Sofia had to leave, and it
Yes.
looks like Greg is still on, but we can't hear him. So you're just going to have to do breakout rooms from the people that are here. But you're a genius at this. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, you're gonna close, we're gonna close here, Jeanne? And I can
Yes, we're
stop
going to
the-
close the recording, but go on with this Zoom session, so no one leave, okay?
Do you have anything to close out with before how you wanna close? Just,
Well,
that's
just,
it?
Dr. Spencer, would you like to say a final word?
Well, let me ask, does anybody have a question you'd like to ask about this? So not just wasting your time. Are you all satisfied with what I gave you, or you're disappointed?
Dr. Spencer, just let me give you some input.
Thank you.
I'm really impressed by what you had to say, because I didn't go into detail about my background. I got a degree from UC Berkeley, but it was in forestry. But I spent my entire professional career in IT. I was on the ground floor when we started installing personal computers and people's desks in the 1980s. I became a programmer. I became a data administrator. I finally retired after 27 years as a software project manager. But what was interesting, everything you said is very true about writing. I had a captive audience because I wrote users manuals, and so like you said, brief to the point and get across what you had to say. So everything you had to say, I as you were talking, I was saying, yeah, I've done all those things and all the writing I've done, but I've published, but never under a name, since there were all users manuals for a variety of different systems. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Praise God. That was really unfair. They should have let you put your name there. I mean, users manuals, we spent more time in those than most other things that are published.
No,
Yeah.
when you write, probably my career, I probably wrote 100 of them, 100 plus,
Wow.
and so, it's nope, you definitely don't want credit for those, because people will yell at you, like you said, some people want more detail, other people want less. So, being anonymous, they couldn't yell at anybody.
That's well put. If you were up here, boy, we'd probably never leave you alone. We'd have all kinds of questions. I'm falling apart here at the seams. Let me fly back.
We can't hear you, Jeanne.
Right. We need to go on to breakout rooms. So I think we need to stop the recording for the
Okay.
breakout room time, but we'll still remain on. Fred, don't go away.